Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly settle down. The speakers already arrived. And before we move on, another interesting topic, let me briefly tell you what's happening in MMA. It's already for your convenience. We also displayed on the screen some interesting events. Just to recap, 27th August, that is on Tuesday, we have Read and Grow series, which we do it exclusively for mental models, 30 thinking tools that separate the average from the exceptional. Maybe this month is a mental varam, mental month. We have been doing a lot of events on mental because that is the issue which is bothering many. And good, it's happening on. Please come. We have got outstanding panel. Sangeeta Sumesh and Mohan Kumaran and Rajan Bala Venkatesan. She is a CFO of Latent Analytics. Then also on the 12th of September, we have again Read and Grow. This is for the month of September. Then 14th, we have 13th Cabin Care Innovation Award function. It's happening at IT Research Park. Out of 350 innovators, we are going to pick up 3 outstanding innovators. It's happening at IT Research Park. You must do the registration. We can take only 1,000 people. The capacity of the hall is only 1,000. We get a large number of requests. If you are interested, get it registered with MMA team, and the invite has already been sent to you today. And it's one of the outstanding program what MMA hosts jointly with Cabin Care. Then on 18th of September, we have another interesting talk, Straight Lines to Great Horizon, Endless Possibilities. It's all about leadership series. We have General Arun will be talking about this, and it's again very interesting even. Ultimately, what is leadership? Today is also we are discussing leadership. You must come and listen to General Arun. At least I'll walk miles to listen to him at. Then we have another general coming and talking who is GOC of the entire South India, General Barar. General Barar is GOC of Dakshin Bharat. He's going to be talking about peacetime challenges, Army's Wayanad experience. Army done some phenomenal work at Wayanad. We want to showcase what has been done. You must have read in the newspaper. You must have seen how a woman officer in armed forces engineering, how she has constructed the bridge overnight. A lot of things has happened. You would have even seen one of the women lady nurse from Chennai. She went and she was hooked and put in the air, and she saved at least 8-10 lives. You must listen to the inspiring stories, that what will happen, it will really kindle you to do something different actually. So come, and this is happening on September. Besides that, we have lined up quite a number of events in the month of September and also in October. Do come. Coming today's topic, preparing the mind and brain for leadership. No wonder we got a very good response. It's all is full. Because everybody want to prepare the mind and brain. It doesn't happen so easily. But maybe you listen to today's topic, it will happen. Ultimately, we have been taught armed forces, courage and actions, all your power, willingness to do, all this is state of mind. So I used to get every time getting state of mind. Actually, when we went through, I've been some difficult situations, been IPK for during some other operation, including Kargil and other things, difficult situations. Even when you jump out of the aircraft, it's not easy. I can say I'm very bold and all. When you are kicked out of the aircraft, you know what it means actually. So that is the time, the state of mind. That is what armed forces prepare each soldier and each officer. But today you are going to listen to somebody who has done phenomenal amount of research, phenomenal amount of interaction this line, and unleashing the inner potential, preparing the mind and brain for leadership. We have 2 outstanding speakers today, but one will be talking is Ennapadam Krishnamoorthy, founder of Buddhi Clinic. To chair the session, we have Mr. Annadurai, ED and State Head of Tamil Nadu and Puducherry. May I request you please take your place on the dais, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, very warm round of applause to our distinguished speaker and chair. It's now my proud privilege to welcome all the viewers watching the program live from all our social media portals, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and also our webcast. As usual, if you have a question, please share your question with the number which is right on your screen. We'll pick up all the questions and place it before the distinguished speakers this evening to respond to all your questions. We only request you, please focus your questions relevant to the theme today. And I expect a large number of questions today because this is a theme which really bothers you, which also kindles the insight of many. They want to know how can I do. I know, even I am very keen to listen to both the speakers to say, what does it mean to preparing the mind and brain for leadership? I know we prepare ourselves to appear in exam, prepare ourselves to face consequences, but really for leadership is ultimately what exactly everybody is looking forward. Now, let me have the privilege of introducing the distinguished speaker and the chairman for this evening, After the chairman opening remarks, the speaker will speak. Afterwards, if there are any questions the audience want to ask, there's a question slip and the pen available there. Write your questions, because we found by experience the question slip comes instead of in 5 minutes we can do 2-3 questions, we can handle 6 questions there. So that's the reason we made it a policy to make sure that you write a questions, so that all your questions are, you can take more number of questions. Mr. Ennapadam Krishnamoorthy, popularly and affectionately known as ESK, is a renowned behavioral neurologist and neuropsychiatrist and founder of Buddhi Clinic and Neurokrish Foundation. He champions integrated brain and mind rehabilitation. He has held prominent roles in epilepsy, dementia, Austin, and much more relevant to the neuroscience. And ESK is the immediate past president of the International Neuropsychiatric Association and has significantly contributed to the scientific literature and global lecturing. He is an adjunct professor of Manipal University and senior clinical advisor of Apollo Hospital Group. We are indeed privileged to have him with us this evening to talk to you on this important subject. Very warm welcome to you, Mr. SK. It's a pleasure to have you with us at the moment. Now it's my privilege to welcome Mr. Annadurai. Annadurai is Executive Director, State Head of Indian Oil Corporation Limited, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry, and also member of the MMA Managing Committee. With over 32 years of experience, he has led key divisions in retail, sales, operations, oil, logistics, and aviation. His career highlights include serving as the Executive Director of IOCL's Gujarat State Office and also the country head of for highway loyalty and digital business. He holds a BE in mechanical engineering and MBA from University of Madras. Very warm welcome to Mr. Annadurai, and pleasure to have you with us this evening. I will now request Mr. Annadurai to share his introductory remarks and take the thing forward. Mr. Annadurai. You can speak from there. Whatever.
Illustrious speaker for the day, Dr. Ennapadam S. Krishnamoorthy, ESK, Mr. Jaykumar, the team MMA, senior corporate leaders, students, and all the attendees today, both the physical as well as those who are connected online. Very good evening. It's quite a pleasure and happy moment for me to be here. While getting associated itself with MMA is a privilege. Why I'm saying this, as a very many early years of my career, at the same place before we being a pan-India company, we keep moving around Gujarat, Mumbai, such venues. I had privilege of attending some of the real great speakers like Mr. Kamath, Chris Gopalakrishnan. I mean, these are the early the forums which I had attended, and recently after I came back, I mean, great opportunity. Let me tell you, to listen to Tata Sons, Chandrasekhar, man from Tamil Nadu, then subsequently Mr. T.V. Narendran, Tata Steel MD, and very recently Mr. Krishnamoorthy Subramanian, our former CA to Honorable PM, as well as the present Executive Director, World Bank. I mean, these are, I think, unimaginable level of people who come here and share their thoughts. So, I'm very happy he made me part of this the great, very reputed organization, and the kind of service they do, human service to organization development, leadership development, as well as the concern they have on the community is very inspiring. Of course, I am associated with many CSRs where I could play a role in tweaking those programs so that it reaches really the privileged, both in my earlier tenure as a head of the Gujarat in oil, but yet for an organization of this kind of body for which the purpose was different, now reaching out to communities really one step forward, the thought process which is otherwise not straitjacketed. Really appreciate them. You live as a model for any such organizations. Thank you, and especially thank Mr. Vijay Kumar for one thing, always I requested, stepped beyond what was told to me. All these programs, he invites all of us, of course, me, but I request him, my colleagues, I would like to put before these great sessions, these speakers, so that they also grow. Okay, the very purpose for which this organization has been formed. So it has been very nice. My leaders, those HODs who are at the level of chief general managers, were also been allowed to attend those sessions. Thank MMA for the special gesture. I continue to ask you that privilege. So if I miss being physically not able to be present, I try to be in the connect with the video or that. Thanks. So that acknowledgement is first due. Coming to the present speaker, just I was looking at some of the reviews of Practo. Let me read that. One is very interesting about the today's speaker. Very impressive. Let me tell you about the doctor. What has been written by one Shobha. He may not be seeing all that, but I thought I would share with you. One doctor who gives patient time, listen to all our complaints related. He treats people holistically. Have given rebirth to me, is the words mentioned. This was one which impressed me. Rebirth to me. I don't know how many more countless patients he has done this. Thank you, doctor. This is what one Shobha has written in the Practo review. And if you look at it, there are 84% of the people who have very positively rated him. Dr. Ennapadam is Krishnamoorthy, founder Buddhi Clinic. I think somewhere we get connected. In fact, let me share with you that for civil services, I had an aspiration to join civil services. At that time, I chose psychology as my subject, one of the subjects, apart from management. I had chosen that, and that was, of course, it's not psychiatry, it is psychology. Okay, but doctor is a specialist. After medicine, he went on to specialize himself in psychiatry and therapies. So that's where he comes. And today's topic, let me slightly dwell on that brain and mind. We all made mistake of using the words brain and mind interchangeably. It is an easy slip, as the two may seem synonymous, but they fundamentally are different. The brain is the physical organ housed within our skull, responsible for regulating all bodily functions and serving as the command center of central nervous system. It gathers, organizes, and disseminates information to maintain our body's harmony. In contrast, the mind is an abstract concept that has been the subject of debate and exploration by spiritual gurus, philosophers, scholars, scientists, and theologians for centuries. While definitions vary, the mind is generally understood as a complex network of thought processes and consciousness arising from the brain's neurological activity. It operates across different states: conscious, unconscious, and subconscious. Brain is tangible, the mind is not. Both are integral to our identity and actions. Leadership at its core is about influencing others based on who we are and what we do. Therefore, understanding how the brain and mind influence human behavior is crucial for today's leaders as they develop and demonstrate the traits needed to lead effectively. Few examples are how do we react. Of course, doctor can evaluate my opinions, but let me trying to understand the brain and mind. A simple thing that we come across as we drive, we will find, especially on highways, one of the vehicles will be coming just in the same lane as we are driving. And how do we react to that? We take all these inputs, our mind processes, and we react in different ways. All of us different. One, I will tell you, we would also go in the same lane with the same aggression, same speed. That is one way of responding to the brain, whatever the neuro inputs that have come. The other would be the just going away, allowing and convincing ourselves that there is no need to collide with him. Let him go, he will learn his own lesson. These two different ways we deal with him. The aggressive opponent. The dealing that portion is actually the mind portion. And there is another story, doesn't stop with brain and mind, there is also a heart to it. Especially when we talk about management, leadership, dealing with people, it's so important that heart is also coming into the existence and we deal with things. And for really leadership to sustain and really create leaders, I think these three things we need to understand very clearly and respond actually. So one is the reflex you have, that's a simple, I think the inputs are taken and we immediately reflect it. But this is another thing, when we come to mind and heart. I can quote one of the examples that I had to see when there was a challenge. Challenging circumstances are the most important occasions where you really, the mind comes into play. Don't go by brain. I think Anand is there from Kriyas. He can understand being a man who is very closely connected to oil industry. I haven't told him, but let me tell today, there was an occasion where I was posted as in charge for that place. We handle oil logistics. I was heading that terminal, the terminal manager in Coimbatore. There was also one oil industry disaster that happened in the year 2009. There was a big disaster in Jaipur where there was a fire. 11 people died, and it was a very a high level of fire accident, which could not be controlled. In fact, the products were allowed to actually completely get exhausted in the fire for 11 days. Nothing could be done. It becomes quite uncontrolled. So after that incident, within a month, I had to face a kind of petrol leak amongst all the petroleum fuels. Petrol is deadly actually. In fact, we call it, you disrespect the petroleum fuels, it gives you back. If you respect, this also takes care of you. The respect in the sense, the following the processes, safety guidelines. So one such occasion, it was actually 4:30 p.m. Normally we wind up our operations and go home. But at that time, that means we have already supplied to the various petrol pumps, customers, the fuel required, and therefore there would not be additional requirement. At such an occasion, so you can't empty it. So during such occasion, there was a leak, and I just made a round of the terminal. It's about 70-acre complex, Coimbatore. Then I do not know, really, it was a very challenging situation. If leak is allowed, exactly what happened in the Jaipur incident, leak is allowed to go on. What would happen? No, it would vaporize. It will create vapors adequate enough for creating a phenomenon called fire and vapor clouds. Vapor clouds will burst actually. So one trigger is enough. In fact, Jaipur fire, people established there was nearby one temple where when they were doing Aarti, the vapor clouds have flown in the wind and reached that temple. So one got ignited and it spread to the entire terminal, which could not be controlled, and it was a disaster. So that was running in my mind, little bit scary situation. So the people who were moment had, they were all running. But one thing that struck me, no need to panic, wait. Slowly, even don't run in the terminal, wait, go slowly. At least go, don't run in the terminal, it creates further panic. So went back to my cabin and called my boss at the time. It was very similar to me, there was an AD, and there was also my immediate boss, one Deputy General Manager, Operations. I just briefed him about the incident and told him, this is the situation. Then I thought typical reaction for these things would be rush whole team there. So they would take the next flight and reach there. Then I requested my ED then, I need one help. don't send anybody here. This is what I told him. Don't send anybody here. Our team is capable of handling this situation. As you send someone, I need to go to airport and receive them. Let me handle this disaster, whatever about to happen situation. And then we went back. The whole night we walked. In fact, I will tell you the people, how they come together. Two of my women staff and an officer refused to go home at 12:30 in the night. They said they will not go unless completely the situation is normal. So they stayed back. We normally, simple understanding, we pump water inside, take the product to a safer place, another tank. But it is not easy. When the water is, density is more than the product, it would settle down. So the objective was that level where the leak is there, you fill up water, so that water would come out. For attaining that, you need to do some at least 20 times filling, transferring, very challenging situation. Prevent the leak. But we did it exactly at 5:30 a.m. We were through. Then my people were worried. No, I told them, don't bother. My cell phone will be, it was 2009, so cell phone had come. Given to security. Whenever you want to know the situation, give a ring. Because we have a walkie-talkie systems. So everybody is connected all the time. So security I informed. You keep updating. Whenever people are calling, please tell them that this is what is going on. Things are under control. So morning, 5:30 I came back, 5:45 I gave a ring to both my ED and my immediate boss and told them everything is safe now. Okay, everything is safe now. More, see that at that time, it was very fearful situation. But somehow I had confidence on the team. Let me tell you, the highlight of the incident is not this. There was one officer at 6 a.m. I find reporting. He rushed, he was on leave at Chennai. He took a bus and reached our place. The Coimbatore was our entire action was going on. So when I asked him, who told you? No, I got the information, sir. Nobody need to even advise me. Simply he took a bus and reached. I want to be there, handling the disaster that has happened to our place. That's the kind of response people will do if there is a absolute understanding, coordination and team spirit prevailing. More importantly, I only salute that spirit of that person. Without being told, he came. So these are the situations where you need to, don't react to the stimuli. More importantly, we will listen to him, the language of the medical language. So, but these are the really opportunities to demonstrate your leadership, make the team also capable of handling. I mean, that's most important as you build your career, especially students are there. Maybe I'll close the opening remarks with one more example. How do we handle children? I have two sons, very mischievous fellows. Very times feel like the way they would behave, I would feel like removing my belt and beat them. Really, let me tell you the kind of the behaviors. But when they were coming up, one is tried to be like a friend. I think other day also very similar example somebody was quoting, the very hall. The other thing I started telling is, in fact my wife used to be very upset. I used to tell them, I won't speak to you. I won't speak to you for some time. In fact, they would come and cry in front of me. After some time, I have seen this is how normally people react. They get very upset if a father, he doesn't speak to the kids. Then slowly I found them, they became already been over years, they've become a good citizens, I would say. I'm very happy that they've come up with a good value system. So you can beat them, you can castigate them, but there is a subtle way of dealing with the mind, I would say. This is what how do we, in between, we play a role in which we can really create a good behavior in the people and make a difference to whichever organization, whether you are part of MMA, part of an Indian Oil-like organization, or a role that we have in the community, you can make a difference with this. So with that opening remarks, I would leave to Doctor for taking it forward, and I am also very keen to listen to him. more as a student of psychology. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for both inspiring remarks and for setting the context, and Group Captain Vijay Kumar and the team at MMA for inviting us in Buddhi Clinic to do this. So this is the third lecture in the series, and some of you might have come to the first two. And what we are trying to do is to build on what we said about intelligence and how intelligence develops and the mind develops, to talking about how you can prepare it for leadership. And I'm going to be using examples from published literature, books of management, and I hope that you'll all go back, especially the students, will go back and read the books of management, because at the end of the day, I'm only giving you a snippet from a book of management. So the first thing to recognize is that it's not whether you're smart, it is how you're smart. Believe me, everyone in this room is smart in some way or the other. Okay? And Howard Gardner says there are many ways of being smart. A naturalist is smart when it comes to nature, farming, geography. A person with spatial intelligence is good with design, architecture. Person with musical intelligence is good with music. Person with logical reasoning will do well in professions like law and medicine and management. A person with good interpersonal skills will do well in marketing and sales, or customer care, or human resources. Person with bodily kinesthetic intelligence will be a sportsman or a performer, a dancer. A person who is a linguist will do well with anything that requires languages or the ability to learn languages as a skill. And a person with good intrapersonal intelligence, who understands himself, will be a good philosopher, possibly even a good leader. Okay? Now, when you think about it like this, we all have at least 3 of these intelligences. You can ask yourself, which of these do I have? You probably are good at 3 of these things, on average. Right? This is something to keep in mind. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is, how do you develop this? Okay? Now, it's important, therefore, that rather than get boxed into doing something, right now everyone's saying AI. So I go and do AI. You have to ask yourself, is this something that comes naturally to me? It's very, very important to address your aptitude. What comes naturally to you? So people automatically go towards the intelligences which they have, at high order. That's very important. My job, for example, involves talking to a lot of people. Now, if I didn't like talking to people, it's a bad job for me too, right? So if I was an introvert, then it's not a great job for me to do. Similarly, you need to understand what your local culture demands. Okay? Going and doing something which sounds fancy, has some global perspective, but is not applicable where you are locally, is not a great idea. And in the same way, society needs to recognize the contribution of the person. So this requires a bilateral openness. We understand what the community we live in, the society we live in requires. Society understands that we are valuable and we can contribute. So there is a bilaterality to it. I've already said this, that there are multiple intelligences, and you're best off if you go towards the intelligence that comes most naturally to you, or towards those intelligences that come most naturally to you. Now, the most important thing to take away from this, therefore, is understand your intelligences before you set off on career or leadership or even a career change. Today, the average person has 3 careers, not 1. Okay? So, understand even before a career change, please understand what your intelligences are. They are your weapons. Go to war with your intelligences. Don't go to war against your own intelligences. This is extremely important to keep in your mind. Now, this is a wonderful book, 5 Minds for the Future, by the same Harvard psychologist, Howard Gardner. he describes 5 minds that are necessary for leadership. Okay. The first mind is the disciplined mind. This is what you acquire through years you spend in scholarship, a craft, or a profession. It takes you about a decade to master. And if you think about it, most of us, by the time we've done a bachelor's and a master's and some little bit of training, it's a decade, right? It emerges from developing skill sets. It emerges from developing a knowledge base. And that's why we have something called education, and that's why perhaps education is very important. You know, today it's very fanciful because people tell us, oh, Bill Gates dropped out of college, Steve Jobs dropped out of college, Elon Musk dropped out of college. So if you drop out of college, you'll be successful. Not necessarily. If you understand these personalities, you'll understand why they dropped out of college, right? For most of us, those years in education are extremely valuable because they teach us a knowledge base and they teach us a skill set. And that's the disciplined mind, okay? Then, of course, you have something called the synthesizing mind, which comes usually when you start working. This is learning to integrate different pieces of information. And you start putting that information to work. Remember, when you're studying, it's all theoretical. When you start working, you're starting to apply your intelligence, right? So synthesizing information becomes important. Identifying what jobs there are to be done, identifying how to do those jobs, that becomes important as part of synthesis. Identifying priorities. Please remember, you go to a workplace, you'll get a zillion things to do on a given day. What are you going to do first? What are you going to keep to for later? Prioritizing becomes extremely important. And then applying your knowledge base to understand your ideas. This becomes extremely important, and all this you do through the power of synthesis. Then comes the creating mind. So without discipline, without synthesis, it is difficult to create meaningfully. Okay, you may create, but you may not create meaningfully. So you need that discipline, you need the synthesis, then you create. Now, what is this? It's more a leadership than a managerial function. That's very important to remember. It's the ability to innovate and think out of a box. Now, imagine today you take Uber for granted, you take Ola for granted, right? Now, imagine 15 years ago, 20 years ago, nobody thought of this as a possibility. Right? That's true innovation, right? It's a blue ocean strategy. That why don't I connect everyone who's willing to drive people around into one app which everybody else can use, right? We never knew this 15, 20 years ago. So that is the ability to innovate. Then what happens? You have to develop a compelling narrative. It's not just, if you think about it, if you're starting a company, you have a startup, you need to evangelize your startup, which means that you need to have that narrative in your head. Why is this that I am doing extremely important? What is the relevance of what I am doing? And even if you're not a startup founder, if you're in a job and you want to convince people to follow you and do things, which is leadership, once again, the narrative becomes important. It has to be compelling. It's got to hold my attention, right? Then you need to get people to do things. And how do you do that? By persuasion and by example. Right? When COVID happened, 4 days after, I said, I'm going to clinic. The lockdown started. I said, nobody's stopping me from sitting in clinic. I'm going to go sit in my clinic. Everyone said, why are you going? I said, if I don't go, how can I expect my staff to come? I need to be there in the front. Only then can I expect them to come. Right? So you need to lead by example. I am willing to take the risk because I want to look after my patients. Only then I can tell them that you guys need to take the risk. Please come. Right? We need to look after our patients. Then it becomes our patients. This is important. And then, of course, finally, if you think about it, Big Bang thinking out of the box. So the people who founded, Uber, Ola, whatever. The number of things today which are mind-boggling. Facebook. Right? Or Insta. The people who founded these things engaged in out-of-the-box Big Bang thinking. And that's very important. Once you reach a certain point, if you aspire to be a true leader, then Howard Gardner says you need 2 other minds. He's already told you about the disciplined mind, the synthesizing mind, and the creating mind. Now he says you need to be respectful. Now, what is a respectful mind? It is the ability to empathize with others, to make common cause with them, understand where they are coming from. And if you can't do that, you won't be a great leader, is the point that he is trying to make. Empathy. I can feel what you are feeling. That's empathy. Okay? I understand instinctively what you're feeling. I'm able to put myself in your shoes. Is a very important leadership quality. In fact, it's predicted that the larger majority of CEOs in the next 20 years will be women. Why? The big E, empathy. Right? They're more capable of empathy than male CEOs is the prediction. Okay? I'm not saying this is true, I'm telling you it's a prediction. And then, of course, there is something called the ethical mind. Our chairman was just talking about how MMA is doing so many things for the community, is conscious about the community. As individuals, we need to understand our roles as a worker, as a citizen, someone who belongs to a region, a nation, and a planet. What are my duties and obligations? And we need to have this concept that the world needs to be a good place and I need to work towards it. Which means that starts in my workspace. My workspace needs to be good. Now this is the ethical mind. Okay? And if you don't have an ethical mind, if you don't have integrity, most enterprises without that will fail. You will do well in the short term, but you won't succeed in the long term if you don't have integrity, because you can fool all people some of the time, some people all of the time, but you can't fool all people all of the time. Right? So ethics and integrity therefore become important. But ask yourself the question, here's the richest man in the world. Okay? Are all leaders respectful and ethical? It's been prescribed to you. Right? When he bought Twitter, 80% of people lost their jobs. And I think all you got from Twitter was an email saying, so sorry you don't work here. Right? So was that being respectful and ethical? That's a question that we are left with to think about. So sometimes leadership is not all about being respectful and ethical. I'm just going to take you down a slightly different tangent now. Let me give you the other example, Steve Jobs. Okay? And if you read about Steve Jobs, here are a few things people say about him. He has a reality distortion field. In his presence, reality is malleable. He can convince anyone of practically anything. It wears off when he's not around, but it makes it hard to have realistic schedules. Another comment about him. It came from willfully defying reality, not only to others, but to himself. He can deceive himself. Here's another comment about him. He reminded me of Rasputin. He laser beamed in on you and didn't blink. It did not matter if he was serving a strange purple juice. You drank it. Okay. So when you read about Steve Jobs, he not only could tell you different things at different times that were totally contradictory, he could convince you about those totally contradictory things. He was also himself convinced about those totally contradictory things. Right? Now, why is this important? Why am I saying this? I am saying this to say a lot of leaders do this. That's because a lot of effective leaders are what? Psychopathic. Right? A psychopath is someone who's got low empathy. A psychopath is someone who cares more about himself than anybody else in the room. But very often, people who make it to the top of the boardroom are psychopaths. And this is something that I'm going to give you more examples, but this is something that you need to think about, right? That empathy may not always be a good thing. Being respectful and ethical may not always be a good thing. And I need to obviously bring you back and convince you it's important to be respectful and ethical, but I'm going to make some points. Now, what differentiates those with positive psychopathic attributes? One of the most famous serial killers is Ted Bundy. You can Google it. Okay? Ted Bundy murdered 36 people. And do you know how he picked up his victims? He picked them out by the way they walked. Okay, the gait told him that this person's vulnerable, good to kill. Now, that is psychopathy with criminal intent and negative consequences. Okay? But what's common between him and a Steve Jobs and an Elon Musk? These people are ice cool under pressure. Okay? They don't feel emotions the way most people do. Okay? And they balance an aptitude for predatory violence with enhanced empathy, the ability to get under the skin of their victims. Okay? What do you think many of your so-called godmen are? I don't know how many people in this room follow a godman. No hands going up. But let me tell you, the vast majority of godmen succeed because they have this ability to get under your skin. They have this ability to make you feel they know things about you which you've never told them, that you can relate to them. It's like a spider weaving a web. Okay? And psychopathic leaders are like that. They can get under your skin. Okay? Now I'm going to give you two cases. Don't try to read before me. Let me read the case out to you. Alright? Case 1. A railway trolley, just close your eyes and imagine this. A railway trolley is hurtling down a track. In its path are 5 people who are trapped on the line and cannot escape. Fortunately, you are in a position where you can flip a switch that will divert the trolley down a fork in a track away from the 5 people. Fantastic. But there is a price. There is another person trapped down that fork, and the trolley will kill him instead. So, how many of you will flip the switch, save 5 people, and kill 1 person? Hands up, please, if you will flip the switch. Excellent. I see quite a few hands going up. Hold that thought. Okay. Now, case 2. A railway trolley again is speeding out of control towards 5 people. But this time, you're standing on a railway bridge above, and in front of you is this huge stranger. The only way to save those 5 people is to push him over so that he falls in front of the trolley and stops the trolley. Okay? How many of you will push the guy over to stop the trolley and save 5 people? I see 1 or 2 hands, brave hands going up. Alright. So I'll tell you, both these are called moral dilemmas. You are forced to take action that harms somebody but saves other people. Okay? And this can happen to you in real life. Alright. Now, the first one is an impersonal moral dilemma. All you had to do was flip a switch. Not a big deal. The second one is a personal moral dilemma. You actually had to kill someone, dump him over onto the track. Right? Now, when you look at the personal versus interpersonal in a brain scan, right? When the dilemma crosses from impersonal to personal, your emotional brain will light up. All those red areas will light up in your brain. So if you're not a psychopath, your brain lights up because this is troublesome to you. Right? You're less troubled by the impersonal, by flipping the switch. You're very troubled by the personal. What happens in the brain of the psychopath? There is radio silence. Nothing lights up. Because it doesn't affect the psychopath at all. Now, what does this tell you? That he lacks empathy. He is unable to put himself or herself in your shoes. Okay? Now, who put their hand up saying, I'll heave the person over onto the track? Who put their hand up to say, I will heave the person over to the track? I will kill the guy to stop the trolley from killing 5 people. Potential psychopath. Easy diagnosis. I'm joking. Okay? Now, so the author of this book, okay, it's a beautiful book. I'll recommend it to you. The Wisdom of Psychopaths. Okay. Now, the author of this book, what he points out is that this is Arctic neurology. Who stays ice cool under pressure? Our chairman was just talking to us about a dangerous situation and how that situation was handled. Okay. What they found in research was Neil Armstrong, the first man to land in the moon. You would think that his heart would be a trip hammer. His pulse would be all over the place. He'll be sweating when he's stepping off that moon landing Apollo onto the moon. Correct? No man has ever done it before. You would think that he was under tremendous pressure when he did that. What happened? His heart rate fell rather than rose. Okay? So he was ice cool. More pressured he got, he was ice cool. Right? Now another example, there was a study of bomb disposal operators, and as captain would tell you, group captain will tell you, bomb disposal is risky business. Can blow up on your face naturally. You're on tenterhooks every moment, and you're doing this, please remember, for other people, not for yourself. Right? Now, he looked at people, Stanley Rackman, those who had been in the profession for over 10 years, and divided them into those who had been decorated and those who had not been decorated. Meaning these people got awards, these people didn't get awards, but they had the same amount of experience. And what did he find? In the decorated, those who were awarded, their heart rate actually goes down when they start diffusing a bomb. They assume what he called the cold meditative focus. You know, this is a very important leadership lesson, that under pressure, there is a group of leaders who don't flinch, who embrace pressure. They want pressure, right? And they actually chill. They calm down even further in order to do what they have to do. And this is an important thing for you to keep in mind. And what's the difference between Veerappan, Sandalwood Veerappan, whom we all know, and Elon Musk? What's the difference between these people? There was a study which looked at it. Superficial charm, egocentricity, I am the most important person in the room, persuasiveness, I can get you to do things what I want you to do, lack of empathy, independence in thought, and focus was all great in the business leader. The same things was there in the criminal, but he had law breaking, impulsivity, and physical aggression cranked up. Okay? So, the effective business leader is as criminal in his mind as the fellow in jail. Elon Musk's brain is very similar to Veerappan's brain. Right? But Elon Musk uses it in such a way that he never gets into trouble with the law. Right? Poor chap Veerappan gets himself into trouble with the law. That's the fundamental difference. But that quality of leadership is a very interesting quality, which I'll leave you with as a thought process. So, from this section, I want you to conclude that the capacity to make hard decisions, however hurtful they may be, defines leadership. Empathy is an important leadership quality, but misplaced empathy can be a leadership killer. You need to feel empathy, but not in such a way that it kills your own leadership. This is important. Finally, the Stockdale Paradox. If you have not read this book, you must. It's called Good to Great by Jim Collins. Okay? Now, what Jim Collins says is that every good to great company faced significant adversity along the way to greatness of one sort or the other. And every case, the management team responded with a powerful psychological quality. On the one hand, they stoically accepted the brutal facts of reality, and on the other hand, they maintained faith in the end game that we will prevail. Okay? Now, this he calls this duality, he calls the Stockdale Paradox, which goes to Admiral Jim Stockdale. Now, he was the highest ranking United States military officer housed in the Hanoi Hilton a prisoner of war camp during the height of the Vietnam War. He was imprisoned for 8 years, separated from his family. He didn't know how they were doing. They didn't know how he was doing. He was tortured 20 times. He lived through the war without any prisoner's rights, no set release date, and no certainty as to whether he would ever survive to see his family again. Now, but what did he do? If you read the chapter, which makes very interesting reading, he organized everyone around him to communicate with each other. So they would hit their spoons on the prison cell bars, and they had a coded language that he developed that they used to communicate constantly with each other, and he used that to motivate people, right? So, he was asked the question, who did not make it out from Vietnam? Who kind of died in this process? And he said, the optimists died. Now you would think the optimists are the one who will survive, right? He said, no, the optimists died. Why did the optimists not make it? Because they were saying, oh, when it comes to Christmas, I'll be released. Somebody will get me out of here. Then when Christmas is over, they'll say, when it comes to Easter, I'll be released. Someone's going to get me out of here. So they lived constantly with the belief that someone's going to get them out of here. And he pointed out that that was not good enough. So he said, you must never confuse the faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. So he told himself, I have no date in my mind. I do not know when I will get out of here, but I will get out of here. Right? And that helped him survive. And you will, if you read the Jewish stories from the World War, the prisoners' camps, same stories you will read there as well. Okay? So rational optimism, faith that one will prevail, and the resilience to fight against all odds, to play the long game, they define the leader. And this is a point that I want to, this is about roots of resilience. Okay? Long range planning, thinking for the long future, and being able to delay gratification, right? If you think about it, what does your social media do to you today? It makes you want instant gratification. I posted, now how many people liked? Oh my God, only 2 people liked, right? 5 minutes later, how many people liked? 10 minutes later, how many people liked, right? Now, it makes you want to be gratified, right? I post, I know they will like. Let me check this 24 hours later. That's delaying gratification, right? Delaying gratification is a very important leadership quality. So in summary, develop your 5 minds: disciplined, synthesizing, creative, respectful, ethical. They will serve you well. Balance your empathy with cold, hard logic. Like Jobs and Musk, develop your Arctic neurology. It's important, right? Read The Wisdom of the Psychopaths. Please read Walter Isaacson's biographies of both Jobs and Musk. They are wonderful, right? And balance your brutal truths with rational optimism. Build resilience and the faith that you will prevail. These books teach you wonderful lessons. So what have I done? If you think about it, I used my disciplined mind to synthesize information. I've created a PowerPoint for you. I've tried to be respectful and ethical in the way that I presented it to you, right? And I think that that is the way to think about it in the long game. As Montaigne said, I have just gathered a posy of other men's flowers, and nothing but the thread that binds me is my own. So none of these ideas are original. All of them come from these wonderful books, and I will leave you to think about those ideas and also read the books. Thank you.
We can take as many questions as possible. I think many doctor has tried to address this, as I find quite a few questions through the narration he had already articulated, but yet I think something which is unique, let me different, we'll try to take. How should educational institutions adapt to better for preparing future leaders by incorporating lessons from neuropsychiatry and behavioral neurology in the curriculum. I think basically how they can, the question is about how we introduce these principles in making the students become better leaders. That's what it's seen.
Thank you, sir. I think the most important thing, if you think about it, for education institutions is to not try to make all of us into square pegs that fit into round holes. Because ultimately, life and society is not predictable, and there is nothing there that you're going to perfectly fit into. So what educational institutions tend to do is give you a common curriculum that you're supposed to fulfill. And that itself poses a challenge, because if you don't have that particular attribute, for example, some of us are terrible at taking exams, right? I'm bad at exams. I'm very good at vivas. You put me in front of examiners, you can ask me any question, I'll bash it out. But you give me an exam paper, that's it. I will screw it up badly and give it back to you. I've struggled with this all through my life. Okay. Now the problem therefore is, if I only was always examined through vivas and not through exams, I would have been much better off, right? But that wasn't the case. I had to take a lot of exams which I did not like. And that's just a simple example of how our current education system is perhaps not perfectly oriented. Now, where can we improve? I think allowing people to take on projects that interest them, allowing people to choose optional subjects that interest them as part of their curriculum, allowing people to pick courses which are perhaps industry and work oriented rather than just education oriented, and which are offered. For example, I offered a famous university that I would come and run a behavioral psychology course for them, behavioral science course for them. They didn't take me up on it. I said, look, I'll do 10 modules for you, and 10 modules, it's an optional course. Anybody who wants to take it up can take it up. Just give them credits. They didn't have the openness of mind to think about it. But I think that will probably be a solution, that we do get, give people the opportunity to think about these things. I think if you think about it, the pandemic taught us that the mind is extremely important. And to understand the mind, you have to understand the brain, you have to understand neuroscience. So at some level, I think including this in education in many ways is very important. I'll leave you with one final thought. Do you know that of the top 50 CEOs in the world, more than 50% have a background in humanities, not in STEM, not in management. They have a background in humanities. You think that people who become CEOs will be from STEM and will be from management. I'm sorry to disappoint you, right? So it's very important to think much more broadly.
Thank you. Just also wanted to say about very nice way in which we got, to know about 5 minds, very interesting. And the example of railway trolley, very interesting. We all got, for one thing or other, we wanted to raise the hand. Okay, so you caught us, actually. And the Stockdale Paradox was really very well articulated. As you were taking us through this respectful, what was coming to my mind was same example, while many things to quote, the drivers, all of you know the truck drivers, one of the most underprivileged people in the society. We, especially oil industry, we look at them like a thieves only. Always we look at them because there are people, but we have also overcome through automation, the latest digital. But I am talking about some 15 years before. So people would not talk to them. People would not treat them also properly. Always looked at as if some trouble creators. But this was an opportunity. In fact, I am a marketing person who suddenly was put into this kind of logistics. Then there was a challenge, how to deal with them. One thing I try to be there is treat them like me, very simple. Same respect, whether it is a canteen boy or anybody, like if I address my father, Maryadaya Vanga Pongana, same thing I used to deal. And very, looked at their problems. There are many problems. They have their own issues, but nobody cares actually. Nobody cares. Like, there was an issue in Coimbatore about traffic restrictions. But we send the load right through the day. We have to meet the requirement of kerosene. Those days, kerosene was very important. Ration shops. And then I don't send the product to petrol pump. Entire people will agitate. There will be no product. Your transport system that has evolved. We have 21,000 buses in Tamil Nadu. So these are, you can't avoid sending the load. But they were caught by police. There were some deaths in the city on account of road accidents. Then everybody, BPC, HPC went on agitation. But the people, drivers there, because of this relationship, what doctor was talking about, the empathy reasons, they came to me and told, in fact, I asked them, those guys have gone on strike. What is that? Why you people have not, in fact? Then they were telling me, we have a confidence on you that you would find a solution to this. That actually put a pressure on me. I had to go to really police, and then we managed it well through the police. The point is how it can make a transformational change in the people when you treat them properly. The simple, nuances that we exhibit in our behavior makes all the difference. Very impressive. We don't know what we do. That's the fact. But if these are not learnt, these occasions make us to at least realize the importance of the 5 minds. There's a few more questions. Little seems to be highly technical. Maybe only doctor can clarify us. How does neuroplasticity play a role in developing leadership qualities? Can the brain's capacity to change be actively leveraged to cultivate leadership skills?
Very good question, actually. So, one way, if you think about it, for many years, we thought the brain was a static organ. It could not change. Okay? About 25 years ago, University College London did this very interesting study. They looked at cab drivers, the people who drive the black cab in London. And in those days, you had no Google Maps. So, you're supposed to memorize the map of London in your head. So, they looked at those cab drivers when they were entering the training. It's called the knowledge. And when they left the training, and they measured the part of the brain which is responsible for memory, called the hippocampus. If you draw a line through your ears, right in the middle is the hippocampus on both sides. And what they showed was that as they went through this training, the hippocampus actually enlarged in size. It's one of the first proofs that the brain is a plastic organ. You can train your brain to become, to do something. Now, if you adapt this and think about your own lives, when you do something repeatedly, you become better at it, usually. Take driving as a skill, for example. Right? When you start off driving, you are conscious about everything that you do. Every time you change the gear, every turn that you take. Over a period of time, you will get from, say, Adayar to MMA, and you won't remember the journey at all because your mind was processing something else, because you picked up that skill. In many ways, leadership is no different. That repeated experience at taking decisions in critical moments, like Mr. Annadurai has been talking about, getting people to do things, engaging in conversations, dealing with difficult situations, your brain starts processing this further because your brain works by recognizing patterns. And if you think about it, most of what we do in life is patterns, pattern recognition. For example, what I do in my work, by the time someone's told me the story, 3 minutes later, I mostly know what this problem is. Okay, and that's because of pattern recognition. Years of doing the same thing have taught me very quickly to diagnose. This is what is wrong with this person. I could be wrong sometimes. And if I can't make up my mind in 3 minutes, I know this one's going to be challenging. Right? It's going to take me much longer. I'll need a lot of investigations to come to some conclusion. So, in a sense, leadership also, if you think about it, is pattern recognition. But leadership also is developing some of the skills that we talked about. It's being able to convince people to go along with you, which requires, even if you're not empathetic, a pretense of empathy. Right? You need to make them feel that you empathize with them, that you're making common cause with them. And this is something that we all have to, those are the skills that we have to perhaps work on developing. I used to say this for public speaking. People ask me, how do you public speak? Right? Stand in front of the mirror. Okay. Practice. Nobody speaks well in the beginning without practice. Some of us are better at it than others for natural reasons. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, if you practice repeatedly, you'll get better and better at it. Leadership also requires practice. And I think that's where the neuroplasticity comes in, because those neurons are going to fire more and they're building pathways inside your head. If you remember Vivek's slides from the last session, how your brain is full of these super highways, which are getting active. Leadership is also part of those super highways.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Few more questions. Could you share what are the key neurological and psychological traits that distinguish effective leaders from others?
So I don't know if there are key tests that distinguish leaders in that way. There are many key tests that tell you about your mental makeup, about your psychology. And if you work for any large organization, you will be forced to take some of those tests before you join the organization. That is definitely there. What we know at work, for example, we do a psychometry for everybody who joins my company. And I can tell you one thing, that very often people will come and show me a very problematic psychometry. And they will say, do we really need this person in our organization? Right? And the thing I always tell them, the more difficult the person is, the more likely they are to be a leader. Because they think differently. They don't think like everybody else. So what you need then is the patience to bring them into a system and work with them in order that they express their leadership in a positive way. So in that way, tests are not always particularly helpful, according to me, as a choice of positive or negative. So this is one. And I think if you think about some of the greatest leaders, think about Steve Jobs, think about Elon Musk. I'm saying greatest leaders because they brought about technological revolutions. Complete technological revolutions that they commercialized. Not easy to do. And if you think about these guys, the independence of thought is something that defines them, that they think very differently. Why is SpaceX successful and Boeing has not succeeded? The reason is that Elon Musk puts crazy timelines on SpaceX. He will go into the floor and he will say, this rocket will be launched 17 days from now. And nobody will be even ready for 17 weeks from then. But the biography tells you that he always succeeds. He always gets people to follow the timeline that he sets. The rocket is launched 17 days from now. So somewhere the mind thinks very, very differently compared to everybody else.
Thank you. They get emboldened. Basically, once they attempt this very difficult, critical, crashed time task, once they achieve, they get emboldened. Like a small steps at a time. So that's what you were saying. Can you share specific exercise or practices that can help individuals train brains for leadership roles based on your clinical experience?
I honestly don't know what specific exercises or practices, but there are some commonalities of many great leaders which are now talked about. Many of them wake up by 5 a.m. Many of them read. Many of them practice meditation or mindfulness. Many of them have a good work-life balance. They have time for other things. It's not just about work, and work. Okay? So these are things I think everybody can learn from leaders and everybody can transport onto their own life. That, you try to practice these things, you may actually succeed. But beyond that, there is opportunity. Beyond that, there is how we respond to opportunity. And finally, if you think about it, life is also a lot about luck. What cards the world tends to deal on you. You can't control that. But what you do with those cards, that you can control. And as Stockdale taught you, Adversity can be turned into victory if only you have the right mindset. And I think that that's something that all of us can actually work on and think about.
Yeah, one last question we'll take. How can individuals identify and overcome mental barriers that hinder their leadership potential?
Excellent question again. I think if you think about it with all honesty, the biggest barrier to our own growth is ourselves. Right? We are the solitary biggest barrier. We always saying, because of that, this did not happen, because of this did not happen, because of so and so, I did not grow. Right? If you turn, in school I was taught a song. When you point your finger at the neighbor, there are three more pointing right back at you. The little one says you're not so hot. Right? Now the point is, when you point the finger back at yourself, there are so many things that we are failing to do or not doing. And I think therefore self-belief and the need for self-belief is actually probably the sort of the stepping stone to doing well. You need to believe in yourself. You need to be willing to take risks. A leap of faith is important. When I do certain things, people who are close to me ask me, how do you know we won't get hurt when we do this? I said, I don't know. I'll figure it out when I land. Right? I can't think about that when I'm leaping. Don't ask me to think about that when I'm leaping. When I land, I'll figure this one out. I'll deal with the problems then. So that leap of faith becomes very important. So, but what stops me from being an Elon Musk? Okay? And I call it the triple M disease, which I am struck with, which most of us are struck with. Middle class Madhavanitis. Right? We are so risk averse because we've always been taught to focus on failure that we are not willing to play the cards for success a lot of the time. Okay? What will happen when you fail is what preoccupies you. What will happen when you succeed? We don't think of that very often because we are conditioned not to think that way. Right? So, what differentiates leaders from others? Possibly that appetite for risk. And I don't really care about failure. I'm going to try anyway. And I am not my greatest impediment. If somebody stops me, it's somebody else. It's not me. Probably those are the recipes for growth. And of course, there are people who spectacularly fail also. And I think the final point, if you don't have at least one failure, it's very hard to be a leader.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most people you talk to who are in leadership positions, they failed at least once. And sometimes they fail spectacularly before they go to the next level. I think we should stop there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you, sir. I got lots of messages online. Fascinating. Over 640 viewers are watching it online, and especially people who are not the Jim Collins, James Stockdale's thing. You must read that because when his plane was shot down, he know he's going to be there at Vietnam, Hanoi, and that is more known for maximum torture. They do it actually. As doctor mentioned, optimists only die. Many of us have got a lot of optimism that we are going to do extremely well in life. That doesn't take you alone, and I think that's a very, very valid point. We quote this quite often. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to Dr. ESK and Mr. Annadurai for sharing the fascinating evening. And I know we all will go out, step out of this hall with more wisdom to be a good leaders and start practicing. Read the books, what is there, it's all in our library, it's there in Kindle. Do that. I request maybe Venkat and our former committee member can join us in honoring the distinguished speaker this evening. Thank you. We are watching this.